And the men who hold high places must be the ones who start.
Welcome back to Pagitt Radio on AM 950, PagittRadio.com. In a conversation with Father Richard Rohr on his book, Falling Upward, A Spirituality for the Two Halves of Life. Richard, thanks again for being on the show. I have a little theory that I've been kicking around in my head, and I'm interested in your comments on this because your book, I think, addresses this. I have a sense that different people are just, I don't know if it's temperamentally or just their circumstance or just sort of their age of their soul, like is really well, the people are really well suited for a certain time of life. Like for some people, being in their 20s just grooves with them, and for other people, it's being in their 50s, and that there's a sensibility that people have where they're like, you know what, my life really kind of made some sense when I was a parent of young children, and this new stage of life just feels a little more awkward. Or some people are waiting for like their soul's time to kind of come into to come into being. Do you have a sense of any of that? Like, are different people sort of well suited for a different stage of the development of human life?
I bet that's true. Yeah, and unfortunately, then we tend to get attached to that and stuck there, when in fact we're all of us being called to the next stage.
That's right.
They say that everybody's doing the right thing if they're doing their stage well. Where you're at, if you're doing the youthful thing with mind and heart and body and soul working together, that's probably what you should be doing. But then, if you've done it well, it starts losing its satisfying aspect. That's what a lot of teachers of growth develop. That you go into what the mystics would call a period of darkness, where it doesn't satisfy anymore. I know how to do that. I've done that for 15 years. Now something else starts appealing to you. If you keep stuck in that place, just doing it over and over again, that's what we mean by addiction. And most people are addicted to what they do well. Why wouldn't you be? I am too, Yeah.
Well, Carla had actually run into this book, someone in a conversation. We were talking about it for the show today. She said, well, this is the book someone was talking to me about just last week.
Literally a week ago. Someone said, I was working on a curriculum for something else, and we were talking about, trying to get people in their 20s and 30s to kind of think more integrated about the way they live out their faith and thinking in terms of vocation and that kind of thing. And this person I was talking to said, Richard Rohr just wrote a book where he talks about the sacrificing part of life and the sacred part of life that you spend, And when he said that to me, like I wrote it down in my notes because I thought I got to read that book, and now here it is, and here you are. Because I find it's so many people, like I said, I'm in my mid-40s, and we talk about midlife crisis, and I think that what you're talking about is the definition of the midlife crisis, and it doesn't necessarily hit you at midlife, but it's that time when you think there's got to be more than just going to work every day.
Yeah.
There's got to be something.
I call the first half the survival dance.
Survival, that's what it was.
Yeah. And the second half, the sacred dance.
Yeah, that's what it was.
And if you do the survival skills well, you get your education, you learn some impulse control, so you're not thrown in jail, and don't father 3 illegitimate children. Your life in the second half of life is much easier, frankly.
Sure.
Now, in the biblical tradition, that would be called the law. And I think most of us, of course, tend to overreact against that because we've all experienced the punitive or limiting character of law. But actually, it's the best way to start because you create that ego structure, that sense of identity, that sense of boundaries, and then, you know what? You don't need to do it anymore because you've done it.
Right.
That's the great paradox.
Yeah.
Richard, it strikes me that kind of message delivered within the construct of religious systems might get a little pushback from some of us religious people, right? Because if you start to say to people, well, you no longer have to live under these controlling systems where someone else tells you how it ought to be and how you ought to live and how it ought.
Yeah, now you have the wisdom to
Yeah,
know
now you have the wisdom.
Yeah.
Do you find yourself, and I know you've been thinking about these ideas, for much of your adult
life. We could talk
life.
about this for 2 hours, yes.
Yeah.
I mean, first of all, let me tell you, I'm a priest in good standing. I've been a priest 42 years.
Okay.
But I'm doing nothing more than repeating what St. Paul said in Romans and Galatians.
Uh-huh.
The good Lutherans of Minnesota will know that.
Yeah, right.
That the law can only get you so far.
Mm-hmm.
And yet when religion tends by its very nature to keep doing the task of the first half of life over and over and over again, that's my opinion, but I think it's my studied opinion, that religion tends to idealize the law.
That's right.
Social order, social conformity. And I'm all for that. But I quote Jesus himself. You go to the Sermon on the Mount. 7 times in a row, Jesus says, the law says, I say. The law says, I say. The law says, I say. He's a second half of life person. He's moved beyond law being an end in itself. But you are right. People who are somewhat rigid or of idealized structure instead of transformation, they will push back. They think I'm saying something rebellious or something iconoclastic. Whereas when you really mature to higher levels of consciousness, higher levels of holiness, if you want to use the Christian vocabulary, you in fact include the previous stages. You don't throw them out. You include them. That, for me, is in fact the sign of a mature person, that you can go back and say, this boy needs to learn the law, and it's going to serve him well in the long run. You don't make it an end in itself. You don't say it in a cruel or threatening way, but you still know that people who do the first half of life well, frankly, live much more successful lives, happy lives, because they internalize values. They know how to break the rules because they know what the rules were there for in the first place.
Well, it's sort of, we apply a standard to parenting that we don't apply to ourselves as adults or as Christian people, I guess. You know, because we would say that about parenting. You don't parent your 20-year-old the same way you did your 4-year-old. You recognize that you are building every stage of your child's development. You're building on what's come before, and if you don't, you're not really getting them anywhere.
Well, I was going to compare it to running because I have since become a runner. Here we go. I've held off for all this time.
Yeah,
like in the last month and a half,
Are you a runner?
I've become a runner.
Richard, do you run?
No, I wish I had more.
Yeah, well, Doug's about to go off on here, so bear with him.
There's only a few seconds left. But it's that I've recently come to the place where I don't run for exercise. I run for the enjoyment, and I exercise so that I'm strengthened enough to be able to run. And it's that shift, and that sounds, because I'm seeing everything through the lens of Born to Run, but that's now becoming this place that I find myself, which is similar to what Richard, can you talk for another 10 minutes here after the break?
Yes, okay, sure.
If you're up for it, we'd love to chat with you another minute or two longer.
Can I say just one thing about what you just said? That's pure action, to act for the sake of the action itself.
Oh, I love it.
That's when you're free. That's good.
That's
okay,
fantastic.
I'm waiting for you.
So hang tight.